35 years ago, The Perfect Weapon introduced audiences to Jeff Speakman and American Kenpo karate. Unfortunately, Speakman's career never really took off, leaving The Perfect Weapon behind as a kind of martial arts movie time capsule, a frozen moment in time when studios were willing to shell out the big bucks to hopefully find their next karate action hero. And even though The Perfect Weapon didn't set the box office on fire, it left a mark on martial arts cinema and remains a beloved movie by fans who still enjoy it today. After Bruce Lee kicked the door in on action cinema in the 1970s, the 1980s became a boom era for martial arts movies. The decade mostly belonged to guys like Chuck Norris, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Shokosugi, and Don the Dragon Wilson, stars who churned out everything from mainstream studio pictures to direct-to-video schlock. Then, in 1988, Steven Seagal entered the chat with his own brand of aggressive Aikido and once again showed American audiences something they'd never seen before. It seemed like Hollywood had finally run out of exotic martial arts to exploit. But then in 1991, newcomer Jeff Speakman came out of nowhere with this special brand of super-fast kinetic karate and blew audiences away. The Perfect Weapon was basically an advertisement for Ed Parker's American Kenpo karate. And while the plot wasn't super original, the movie showcased some of the best fight scenes ever put down on film at that point. Speakman's career lasted about as long as one of his opponents in the movie, but The Perfect Weapon remains one of the best karate movies to come out of that era. Speakman plays Jeff Sanders, a drifter, estranged from his family, and working as a laborer on a road repair crew in a neighboring state. When Kim, an old family friend played by Mako, becomes the target of the local Korean mafia, Jeff heads home to lend a hand. As Jeff makes the drive home, the movie flashes back to his childhood. Still grieving his mom's death, young Jeff has become a problem child for his dad, Carl, an LA cop raising two boys on his own. Carl considers enrolling him in a military school when Kim suggests he try Kenpo school first.
It's not one of those new hippie schools, is it? No, Carl. Old school. 2,000 years old.
Carl agrees, and young Jeff quickly learns to channel his anger into a study of the martial arts. But when a high school bully smacks his younger brother Adam, Jeff springs into action, leaving the bully badly injured. Carl's not particularly impressed with Jeff's lack of restraint and kicks him out of the house, fearing he will be a bad influence on Adam. Now, back in the present, Jeff arrives at Kim's import business in Koreatown as his friend is being shaken down by mafia enforcers. Jeff quickly dispatches the thugs, and Kim assures him it was all a misunderstanding that could be smoothed over. But that evening, while Jeff is away, Tanaka, played by Professor Toru Tanaka, murders Kim as punishment for rejecting the mafia's protection racket. When Jeff finds his friend dead, he vows revenge. The Perfect Weapon isn't terribly original, but in a genre packed with underground fight ring movies and police and super soldier stories, Speakman's everyman construction worker keeps the action grounded in hand-to-hand combat. And it also builds a few flaws into him. Jeff may be physically nearly indestructible, but his lack of street smarts gets him into trouble on more than one occasion. He comes across as a bit of a blockhead, and those flaws and mistakes make him seem more real and relatable. But if Jeff was relatable, the setting in the movie was anything but. The Perfect Weapon was shot in and around LA, which seemed completely exotic to me as a teen growing up in a small town. It has the same vibe as so many other movies from this era shot in Southern California. Movies like Showdown in Little Tokyo, Lethal Weapon, and They Live. A vibe I affectionately call the LA vibe, for lack of a better way of describing it. Little Tokyo stands in for Koreatown, but I'm not sure that it even matters because this movie mixes elements of different Asian cultures together like it's one of those Asian buffets. You've got Chinese and Japanese Americans playing Koreans, but Koreans with Japanese and Chinese last names. Korean mob bosses are referred to as oyabun, a Japanese term. In all honesty, I have no idea why the filmmakers didn't just set the film in Little Tokyo. American Kenpo is an amalgamation of Asian martial arts anyway. But the one Asian martial culture American Kenpo doesn't borrow from, as far as I know, is Korean. There's no Taekwondo or Tangsudo or Kuksulwan anywhere in Parker's system. Again, as far as I know. So, setting the movie in Koreatown and making Mako's character Kim introduce Jeff to Kenpo school as though it were some old Korean system makes no sense whatsoever to me, except for maybe one possibility we'll touch on later. Not that any of this hair splitting really matters as far as the filmmakers are concerned, though, because the beating heart of The Perfect Weapon is found in its fight scenes. The filmmakers may not have known the difference between sushi and kimchi, but as soon as Jeff Speakman starts kicking guys' asses, all of that goes out the window. Now, I really wanted to break down each fight scene because they're just that good, but I found out that gets real tedious real fast, so I'll spare you the play-by-play and just say, if you haven't seen the movie, it's worth it for the fights alone. Speakman is fast. By the time you register that he's hit a guy, he's already hit 3 more and blocked a few punches and kicks in the process. The way he chains together blocks and strikes is just so satisfying to watch. But he can kick too. When he fights James Liu and the other 2 guys in the Taekwondo club, he throws several skillful and pretty fast high section kicks, including a few jump kicks. I mean, he's no Van Damme, but he's able to hang in there with James Liu, who is a phenomenal kicker, and that's pretty good in my book. And Liu gives him a real run for his money in this scene. But just when you think our hero hasn't got the goods, he lets loose a crazy series of super fast knife hands and hammer fists that, stitched together with the sound effects, result in one of the movie's more memorable fight scenes. And the really cool thing is that Speakman choreographed those fight scenes together with American Kenpo founder Ed Parker. Speakman was even given final edit and final sound check on those fight scenes. And you could tell because the level of coordination with the sound and the choreography just sell the hell out of the realism of those fights. I mean, it's just crazy that they gave that level of control to Speakman when that was his very first movie. But they did, and I think the fight scenes speak for themselves. Now, there's not much point in talking a lot about direction or cinematography, but I do want to talk about some of the actors. First of all, I love Mako, and I have since he played Akira the Wizard in Conan the Barbarian. But he's great in everything, and he just makes everything he's in better. The Perfect Weapon is no exception. He brings a warmth to the character of Kim that really brings him to life. It's a bummer when the character dies, but the movie is better with him in it. Seth Sakai plays Jeff's Kenpo instructor, Master Lo. Sakai never quite attained the level of fame and prestige as Mako, but he was one of those actors that popped up all across genre film and television. He had roles in Magnum P.I., Hawaii Five-0, Airwolf, and a personal favorite of mine, Raven, a ninja show that was regrettably canceled after 1 season. Professor Toru Tanaka was the stage name of Hawaiian actor Charles Kalani. He had roles in The Running Man alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger and made an appearance as a bodyguard in Revenge of the Ninja with Shokosugi, as well as appearing in episodes of The A-Team and Airwolf. He plays Tanaka, the hitman ordered to kill Kim at the beginning of the movie. But one interesting tidbit about Tanaka that I didn't know until recently is that he was a childhood friend of Ed Parker. Speakman talks about him in an interview on martial arts action star Scott Adkins' YouTube channel and has a bunch of really nice things to say about him. Definitely worth checking out if you're into these kind of movies. I'll try to remember to put a link below. Another favorite of mine from this era is Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa, who also plays a bad guy here. He also starred in Rising Sun alongside Wesley Snipes and Sean Connery, as well as Showdown in Little Tokyo, another personal favorite, Mortal Kombat, and many, many others. Now, James Liu doesn't have much of a role in this movie, but he's in about 1 million of these martial arts films as a bad guy or a henchman, and he's just always great. Always fun to watch, and just extremely skilled as a martial artist. Great personality on film. I love seeing him present a challenge to Speakman here. He's just fun to watch. It's probably not worth mentioning, but I think one of the other guys Speakman fights in the Taekwondo Dojang is the same guy that fights Lorenzo Lamas in a scene in Night of the Warrior. I can't find his name anywhere, though, so he must be a stuntman that didn't get billed as an actor. If you haven't seen Night of the Warrior, by the way, I recommend it, but only if you like the weird. It's not really a martial arts movie per se, but it was written by Thomas Ian Griffith, the guy that played Terry Silver in the Karate Kid franchise. Like I said, it's kind of weird, but it's a cool genre artifact for those of you that like that sort of thing. James Hong is another actor like Mako who seemed like he was everywhere when I was a kid. He plays bad guy Jung here, but is probably best known for his role in John Carpenter's Big Trouble in Little China. John Dye plays Jeff's younger brother Adam. Dye didn't have a very big career, but he did star in one of my favorite karate movies from this era alongside Eric Roberts and Philip Ree, Best of the Best. Clyde Kusatsu has a very minor role here as a police detective, but I wanted to mention him because he's another one of those actors that was just everywhere in the 80s and 90s. Movies, TV, you name it. He was in Rising Sun, Dragon the Bruce Lee Story, and starred in episodes of MASH, ALF, and MacGyver, among many others. Last but not least, Mariska Hargitay has a blink and you'll miss her role in this. In the TV edit of the film, her character is a love interest for Speakman's character, and that's the version I grew up with. So when I finally got the movie on DVD, I was confused as to why she was nearly cut completely from the movie. You can still find that version with her scenes intact here on YouTube. Again, I'll drop a link if I remember. Her scenes don't add much to the movie, which is probably why they were cut. But I kind of prefer that version, probably just because it's the one I watched as a teen in the 90s. But anyway, if you're interested in seeing that version, you got to search on YouTube. Now, speaking of the 90s, when we talk about decades, we talk about them as if those 10 years have been sealed away in a vacuum. But history's not really that neat. There's no director yelling cut at the end of the decade, letting you know one era has ended and another is about to begin. The first couple of years of the 90s are sort of a weird moment in time, technically not the 80s, but spiritually still clinging to the essence of that decade. The Perfect Weapon exists in that brief moment in time, still bright-eyed and optimistic, still open to a world of possibility and magic. A decade later, the internet would begin to grind the mystique of the Asian martial arts under the ever-marching boot of debate and progress. The term Bullshido became popularized during this time. Now, don't get me wrong, criticism is good, information is good, but there's something about those innocent days of the 70s, 80s, and early 90s when the mystery of the Asian martial arts was still very much alive. For many of us, it was the thing that got us into the martial arts in the first place. Now we just know way too much. We got YouTube experts, forums, slow motion analysis, randos in the comment sections imparting wisdom as if they were the embodiment of Yoda and Miyagi combined. Whole martial traditions have been weighed, measured, and tossed out completely by the internet. And again, there's value in scrutinizing systems that are designed to protect people's lives. Totally. But it's had an impact on the stories we tell ourselves. Instead of just experiencing these movies, we evaluate them. Instead of wondering, wow, how does that work? We scoff and say, that would never work. And those are two very different reactions. Movies like The Perfect Weapon were built for the first. They were built to entertain and to inspire wonder. They rely on a version of the martial arts that's a little bigger than reality, where fights are like coordinated dances and one man can walk into a room and just totally dismantle everyone in it. Not because it's realistic, but because it's fun. It's impossible to suspend disbelief like that now unless the movie is explicitly fantasy. That's why movies like this don't really exist anymore, I think. Not like this, anyway. You either get grounded, hyper-real action, or you get superheroes. There's not much room left for the guy in the middle, the construction worker with a set of skills and a lot of determination. And that's what The Perfect Weapon represents to me, a time when we didn't think we knew everything. And that left room for wonder. Now, when I was 15 or 16, my parents gave me the gift of martial arts lessons for my birthday. Our town had a taekwondo school, and I really had no idea what that was, but they wore colored belts, and it basically looked like karate, so I was all in from the get-go. But I had an appetite for martial arts, and I wanted to learn as many of them as possible. When The Perfect Weapon came along, I had never heard of that particular style. There certainly weren't any schools near me, but I loved what I saw. As a taekwondo student and a tall guy, I was into the kicking aspect of the martial arts. But the way Speakman used his hands totally fascinated me. Every block a strike and every strike a block was a totally new approach to self-defense. For me. And then to add on top of that, his use of the eskrima sticks, It was exotic, but also about as basic as you can get. As far as martial arts weapons go, the thing you're most likely to find is a stick or sticks. It seemed practical, but also utterly fascinating. I took a hacksaw to an old broom handle and copied every move Speakman made in that movie. I set up a dummy behind the house, and I'd spend hours out there just going at it. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I was having fun doing it. Now, remember when I said it makes no sense to set this movie in Koreatown, except for maybe one possibility? Although karate came to be a placeholder term for just about any and all kind of martial arts, Asian martial arts, the reality is that Korean Taekwondo was taking the country by storm. And if the perfect weapon was meant to showcase Ed Parker's system, it stands to reason he and Speakman would want to knock the big kid on the block down a peg or two. Now, I don't know if that's the case. I'm not saying it is. It's pure speculation on my part. But it does make sense from a business perspective. And it kind of worked because I eventually ended up training in Ed Parker's system once I got to the city and found a school. And Speakman says in his interview with Atkins that the movie helped the worldwide Kenpo community. So I say good for them. So if Best of the Best was a commercial for Taekwondo, I suppose it only makes sense that the perfect weapon was Kenpo's answer to it. And if it was, more power to him. When I revisit the perfect weapon now, some 30 plus years later, I remember those late nights working my ad hoc dummy over, kicking and punching the bag, imagining I was someone tougher and meaner than I actually was. And those are good memories, but the perfect weapon, though admittedly not high cinematic art, whatever that is still a great time for me. I see the flaws, and I almost love the film more for them. Speakman's career failed to launch, and he never really started anything approaching the level of the perfect weapon after that. Though, side note, you remember a little movie called Speed with Keanu Reeves? That movie that made about $1 bajillion? Speakman had signed a 4-picture deal with Paramount, and Speed was supposed to be his next movie after The Perfect Weapon. But when leadership changed at Paramount, the script was put into turnaround, and 20th Century picked it up. And that killed Speakman's career. Which is too bad, really. I mean, he was never going to be much of an actor. But man, I'd trade a truckload of modern movies for 3 or 4 more straight-up martial arts movies like The Perfect Weapon. All right, that's it for this one. Thanks for checking out the video. If you're into movies like this, hit the like button. If there's something you want to see me review, drop it in the comments and I'll add it to the list. Be kind, subscribe. Thanks for watching, and until next time.
Hasta la vista, baby.